Sourdough bread. Before store-bought yeast was ever invented, bakers used wild yeast and good bacteria from the air to make their dough rise, and people still bake this way today. The tangy taste comes from the dough sitting and slowly fermenting, sometimes for many hours or even a few days. San Francisco became famous for it, but people were baking bread like this thousands of years ago in ancient Egypt. What makes sourdough different is its thick, crackly crust and chewy inside, plus the fact that it rises on its own, without any added yeast. It's also easier on the stomach for many people, since the slow rise breaks the dough down before it even reaches the oven. Baguette. This long, thin loaf is easy to spot, with its crisp golden crust and light, airy inside. In France, the law even says what can go into a true baguette: just flour, water, salt, and yeast. Nothing extra. Bakers first made it this shape because a thin loaf bakes faster and gets more crust all around. French bakeries still bake fresh batches several times a day, since a baguette goes hard and stale within hours. That fresh-baked routine is part of why it's such a familiar sight across France. Cibatta. Even though it feels like an old recipe, ciabatta was actually invented in the 1980s by an Italian baker who wanted something to compete with the French baguette. Its name means slipper in Italian, after its flat, stretched-out shape. Inside, the bread is full of big, uneven holes, made by a very wet, sticky dough that bakers handle as gently as possible. Olive oil is often brushed on top or mixed right into the dough, giving it a light richness. It's become a top pick for sandwiches, since its firm crust and open inside hold fillings well without turning soggy. Naan made across South and Central Asia, naan is a soft flatbread, traditionally slapped straight onto the inside wall of a tandoor, a round clay oven heated by wood or charcoal. That strong, direct heat makes it puff up and pick up dark, charred spots within seconds. Bakers often mix yogurt or milk into the dough, giving it a soft, pillowy bite that plain flatbread doesn't have. It's usually served next to curries and stews, where its soft folds are perfect for scooping up sauce. Versions with garlic, butter, or stuffed centers have spread far beyond where naan first started. Pita. This round Mediterranean and Middle Eastern bread hides a simple trick. Baked at very high heat, it puffs up like a balloon, then falls flat as it cools, leaving a hollow pocket inside. That pocket turned out to be very useful, letting people slice it open and stuff it like a pouch. Long before sandwich bread as we know it existed, pita was already doing the same job in kitchens across the region. Its plain, slightly chewy bite pairs naturally with hummus, falafel, and grilled meat. Rye bread. In the cold parts of northern and eastern Europe, wheat didn't grow well, but rye did, and that one difference shaped an entire style of bread. Rye flour gives a denser bite and a deeper, earthier taste than wheat, often with a little sourness depending on how long it ferments. Germany, Poland, and the Nordic countries each built their own versions, some so dark and heavy they're closer to cake than bread. Rye bread also stays fresh longer than wheat bread, which mattered a lot in places where grain had to last through long winters. Focaccia. Often called a cousin of pizza, focaccia is a flat, oven-baked Italian bread soaked in olive oil, with small dimples pressed across the top by fingertips before it bakes. Those dimples aren't just for looks. They let pools of oil settle into the dough, keeping every bite soft and rich. Rosemary and coarse salt are common toppings, pressed right into the surface. It goes back to ancient times, even earlier than many of Italy's more well-known breads. The result is a loaf that's soft inside, a little crisp outside, and rich enough to eat on its own. Brioche. Unlike simple breads made mostly from flour and water, brioche is built from butter, eggs, and a bit of sugar, giving it a soft, golden inside closer to pastry than everyday bread. This French classic takes patience, since the soft dough needs plenty of time to rise properly. Its light sweetness makes it a natural fit for French toast, pastries, and even burger buns in recent years. In the past, it was seen as a treat kept for special occasions, not a bread for every day, which still fits its rich, buttery character. Pretzel bread. What sets pretzel bread apart is one extra step most breads never go through. Before baking, the shaped dough gets a quick dip in a lye or baking soda bath. That dip is what gives pretzels their deep brown color, shiny finish, and slightly chewy crust with a light tang. As the story goes, monks in medieval Europe first twisted the dough this way to look like arms folded in prayer. True or not, the shape has lasted for centuries. Today it shows up not only as the classic handheld snack, but also baked into rolls and loaves. Bagel boiled first, then baked. The bagel gets its dense, chewy bite from that unusual two-step process, unlike almost every other bread on this list. It began with Jewish communities in Poland, where it became an everyday food, later brought to cities like New York by immigrants. The hole in the middle wasn't just for looks either. It let bakers thread bagels onto a rod or string to carry and store them. Sesame or poppy seeds are pressed on before baking, adding crunch and flavor to the shiny crust. Cornbread rooted in Native American cooking long before European settlers arrived, cornbread is made with with cornmeal instead of wheat flour. That gives it a rougher, crumblier texture and a naturally sweet, slightly gritty taste that wheat bread doesn't have. Over time, it became a true Southern American staple, often baked in a cast iron skillet to get crisp, browned edges. Since it's made mainly from corn, versions without wheat flour can be naturally gluten-free, unlike most breads on this list. It's usually served warm, next to stews, chili, or barbecue. Injera. In Ethiopia and Eritrea, the bread and the plate are the same thing with injera, a soft, spongy flatbread made from teff, a tiny ancient grain grown in the region. The batter sits and ferments for several days before cooking, giving injera its sour tang and its surface full of small bubbles and holes. Once cooked on a large, flat griddle, it's laid out flat, with stews and vegetables spooned right on top. Pieces are torn off by hand and used to scoop up the food, so there's no need for forks or spoons. Its slightly spongy texture also soaks up rich sauces well without falling apart.